Okay, now let's go to question 2. The main purpose of lines 1 through 10, even awaited me, is to. So there's a couple options. You can go and quickly look at 1 through 10 again, but the easier thing is to go back to this, right? And we know that 1 through 10 is paragraph 1, and my notes say different, loves words, and is poor. So there's got to be something that highlights those 3 words. So introduce the character who plays a part in the narrator's story. Kind of, but that doesn't really make total sense to me. List the difficult conditions the narrator endured in childhood. That's not necessarily a difficult condition, right? Because you don't want to assume anything. So just because he said that he didn't have friends doesn't mean that his life was difficult. So I would take out B. So A, I'm still not sure, so I would kind of just leave this here to come back to. C, describe the passion that drives the actions the narrator recounts. Now that makes a lot of sense to me, because it is about passion, and the narrator is talking about himself, right? Where in A, the narrator, A is assuming that the narrator is talking about someone different, so that doesn't make sense either. So A doesn't make sense, B doesn't make sense, C definitely does make sense, so I'll circle that. And let's look at D. Depict the narrator's aspirations before he met Semper. Now, it doesn't say anything about his aspirations. He's not talking about that he wanted to be a writer or anything like that. He had no aspirations until he met the writings of Charles Dickens. Then, as we can go back, then we can see that he had aspirations to do what Dickens did, but not in the beginning, not in paragraph 1, which is what it's asking. So I would choose C. Then let's see some others here. Which of the following statements about his father would the narrator most likely agree? Okay, so let's go through. He lacked affection for the narrator. Now, he didn't lack affection, because remember how we talked about that he still gave him money for candy. So he did have affection, just not necessarily for reading. He disliked unnecessary use of money. No, we know that's false because he gave him money for candy. So that's not a, that giving money for candy is an unnecessary use for poor people. So he did like unnecessary use for money, and that was giving him money for candy. He would not approve of Semper's gift. Now that might be true, because remember we were talking about that he didn't like the idea of him reading and books. So if we went back to the A, B, C, D thing, it's definitely not A, it's definitely not B. So now let's look at D. He objected with the writings of Charles Dickens. He didn't talk about Charles Dickens at all, the dad. The dad had no idea who Charles Dickens was, and so we know that that's not the case. So once again, I would choose C. Okay, so let's go to question 4. Which choice provides the best evidence for answer to the previous question? So what it's asking is how can we support answer C here? And that he would not have approved of gifts. So we can quickly go back to my notes, and it says in paragraph 2 that dad doesn't understand / support reading. So let's find where that would be. The first one would be 24, 27. So we'll go back here and say, my father was not a miser, and despite the hardships we suffered, whenever he could, he gave me a few coins. That doesn't talk about his dislike for reading, so let's go to 35 through 37. The book seller will let me sit in. That has nothing to do with his dad. Oops. 37 through 38. He hardly ever allowed me to pay for books he placed in my hands, but when he wasn't, that doesn't make sense either. 59 through 61. That afternoon, I took my new friends home, hidden under my clothes, so that my father wouldn't see it. Let me see if I can highlight it. So that makes sense. That talks about why his dad didn't approve of the gift, because he had to hide it under his clothes. So I would say definitely the answer is D, because that proves that he didn't support it. Let's see. I'm not going to do all of these, but you kind of get the idea. It really comes from taking good, quick notes that you can refer to and reading the whole paragraph before you even answer the questions. Because when it comes up with something like this, where it wants you to find a line that gives you the best evidence, you can go back to that paragraph and find exactly where it is, because you know from these notes. And then crossing out the ones that you're not sure about is really helpful for the whole test, because the way the tests are designed, there's usually like 2 answers that kind of make sense, and then 2 answers that totally don't make sense. And so you kind of have to make the best educated guess between the 2 answers that do make sense. So I hope this helps. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'm happy to answer them. I'll send you these as soon as I figure out how to do it, if you want me to send it on like Facebook or Gmail or whatever. But this strategy is the best way to deal with these. So yeah, let me know what's up.